Hi guys, Jamie here, and today I want to give you 3 reasons why you should never use vanilla HTML. And vanilla HTML is really referring to creating websites using only plain old HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. And today I want to outline exactly why you should never do something like that. So reason number 1 is because of duplicate code. So say for instance you're building a website, and at the top of your website you have a header, and you want that header to be constant across all the different pages, the about page, the contact page, the home page, all the pages. You just want the header to be exactly the same across all of those. Well, in vanilla HTML, what that means is you will have to actually copy and paste that header across all of the different pages, and then every time you want to make a change to the header, then you'll have to update it in all of the places which you copied and pasted the header to. So that means that as your site gets bigger and bigger, the amount of duplicate code will increase as well. And so the more duplications there are, the worse the duplicate code problem is. And so that's why I'm putting this as reason number 1, because you never ever want to create a large website using vanilla HTML. It will make maintenance a nightmare, and also just setting it all up in the first place, that would be quite difficult as well. Reason number 2 I have to never build a vanilla website using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is because dynamic content is very difficult to create. So by dynamic content, I mean content that changes over the lifespan of the page. So an example might be if you have a timer on the page and that timer needs to be constantly updated. It's counting down to 0 from like 10 minutes or something like that. Well, that's rather hard to do in vanilla JavaScript. There's just a lot of boilerplate stuff you have to do, like you have to get a reference to the actual element on the page, and then you have to grab its inner text and then change it, or if it's a more complicated item, then you'll have to do quite a bit more than that, change all the different pieces of that item. Whereas in a framework, dynamic content is baked right into the framework. The framework expects that content on the page will change, and so they usually have some sort of change detection mechanism. And also kind of related to this is events on the page, like when the user clicks something, or when the mouse hovers over a certain element. Those transition from the HTML to the JavaScript or the logic much more easily in a framework. So there's a much tighter integration between the view and the logic code. It's all more tightly meshed together because the original code for event handling and so forth, all this stuff was developed way back in like the year 2000, around 1995 to 2000. That's when the stuff was being first developed. And there have been a lot of quality of life changes added to frameworks to allow integration between the view and the controller to be much more flowing and just easy to handle overall by the developer. Okay, so event handling and just dynamic content in general is way easier handled in a framework rather than vanilla HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. So for those first 2 reasons alone, I can still highly recommend using a framework as opposed to using vanilla HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. And that's because duplicate code is a nightmare to deal with, as well as dynamic content is much easier inside of a framework. And then the third reason I have for you guys to never use vanilla HTML, JavaScript, and CSS is because the framework usually comes with a lot of CLI niceties, and by CLI I mean command line interface. So usually there's some sort of package. In Angular it is the ng package, so you type ng and then whatever you want to do on the command line. And this tool allows you to do a lot of crazy different things, like minification of your code on building, as well as different environments depending on if you're building for development or production, and also just generating components and just new code for your project, or even just generating a new project entirely. And so it really gives you a lot of quality of life things which you really just don't want to do on your own. Like you don't want to create all these boilerplate files by hand. You don't want to manage the minification of your project, like why does every site need to invent its own scheme for minification of the files in order to have a faster load time on the front end for the user who's loading those files? users really don't need to create their own scheme for this. It's really great to have a framework which does all this stuff for you. It's a problem which has already been solved, and so we might as well just use the existing solution, which is very nice. Personally, I prefer Angular as a framework, but here I'm just giving the argument that a framework in general should be used as opposed to vanilla HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. So guys, those are my top 3 reasons. There are a bunch more reasons I could think of, but for the sake of this video, I'll just keep it short and sweet. Avoiding duplicate code, ease of dynamic content, and also a bunch of CLI niceties. Those are 3 reasons why you should instead use a framework as opposed to using vanilla code, because really just all the maintenance and quality of life stuff is going to be way better if you use a framework. So guys, thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to leave a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that. And also leave a comment down below if you can think of any more reasons. I'd love to hear what reasons you have to use a framework instead of vanilla code. Alright guys, let me know what you thought of the video in the comments below. Subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you in the next one.